What?
I was looking to abstention.
All right, cool. Let's do this. Cool, and it totally works, right? Review that functionality, and that is the event that I'm listening for is on this form. The form will submit. If I put a click on this, if I decided to use, you like this? Learn to use the internet level 2. That's powerful. All right. So this comment form, listening for the submit. If you use click here, it will still actually work. I just wanted you to not use click, but the idea is that.
When you click, when you click on the text, unfortunately, before you enter it, will it do something, or it's only when you click?
Let me ask that question. And so I think let's go with hands. Cool. So the idea here is that with HTML5, the event specifically for a form will fire both the click and the submit because they kind of realize like, oh, people are just putting click here, and that's going to be okay. So it'll fire both. So if you put click, it's not going to be a problem, but I wanted you to get into the idea that you don't like click forms necessarily, you submit a form. Cool? Just wanted to clarify that. And that's the whole essay in the lecture. Right? No. That nervous laugh made me worried. All right, so what I wanted to talk about was the fact that we have this like alert me, this console log, and this console error. Why is it not working now? Oh, I actually did all of it inside the console. I never actually wrote any of the code here. So let's review a lot of that. What do we do to kind of get this functionality working? What is the pieces of information that we need? Right, we need to grab the element off the DOM, right? So we'll use some sort of query selector. So document.querySelector. And then what did we query select? What file would I look for? In the HTML specifically, I'd be looking at what? All right, any sort of unique value that maybe I can associate with what's going on. So let me actually do that. So here we have this thing with an ID of alert. So let's do that. ID of alert, and that's going to be the alert button. Oh, wow, Ruby just creeps in so fast. All right, and then what do we do with the alert button? What happens when a user clicks, right? Do we need to be tracking that information? Right? Right. So we have the alert button, add event listener, and what event do we want? Click, click, click. Cool. And then what does it do? It runs the callback function, right? So I wanted to clarify a couple things about this callback, as well as talk about event delegation today. So we know that this function knows about the event. So it will receive the event as an argument, where I will hereforth be super lazy and refer to this as E. You will see a lot of Stack Overflow arguments, just kind of be like, hey, it's E. This E is just short for event.
But can you put anything you want technically in between those parentheses and still those because it's coming?
You know it.
Okay.
Remember, this is just a placeholder.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so that the first argument coming in will be the event. Absolutely. So what do we want now? When somebody clicks this alert button, what should happen? Right, the logic here, right? So alert, and that is got 'em, coach. If I refresh, and I hit this, it says got 'em, coach, and nothing else seems to be happening. But what I want to kind of dive into right now is this idea of what is the event. So first thing I can do is I can drop a debugger right here. So this is like your bug. Cool. So when should this debugger fire? When I hit this, only on this alert. Cool. So I'm in the debugger. What? Oh yeah. Boom. Cool. So because I'm pausing the debugger, right, based on scope, I have access to this E. If you really want to look at the debugger, it's very powerful. So let's check it out. It even tells you what it is, right, what this E is. But we can just, in the console, figure out what's going on. So what is E? It's a mouse event, right? Because I clicked it with my mouse. So what specifically is happening here? The current target would be the button alert, which makes total sense. And then I have all these other things inside. I have something called path. I have something called type, which is a click. So my event type is a click, which makes sense.
So is it giving you the graph, the x and y axis, where the mouse is located on the screen?
That is correct.
So that you can use events to trigger where the mouse goes on the screen and different things happen.
Yep. Where your mouse is, you can trigger. Absolutely. You can keep track of like where the mouse is. Remember, all these events are firing all the time. But if you're not listening for them, we can't really do anything with them. It doesn't mean they're not happening. Cool. So,
Quick follow-up, what's the difference between the client X and screen X then?
I don't actually know, to be honest. But I'm sure we can look it up. Huh? Cool. So let's take a look more about this E and see what the target is. So the E.target is this button. Cool. And the way we handle this data-name, it's a very particular type of attribute, and it's known as a data set. So if I were to do E.target, which is the button, what is the data set for that button? You get this DOM string map, which looks like an object with key value pairs. So name going to alert. So if I ask specifically for the E.target.dataset, I see data-name, which points to this key value pair. Name, name, alert, alert. So if I ask for the name, I get alert. No big deal. Let's do this. Inside my HTML, let's add some more data attributes, like data-id is equal to cool ID, and then let's put data-dragon. Dragown. You know what? Data-swaglord. Yeah. Cool. Dripping in swag goo. Let's see what happens. That looks fine. If I actually hit the alert me again, I can take a look at the event. I'm going to take a look at the event.target. And I have all those like new data attributes, right, that I just added. So what is E.target.dataset? It's DOM string map with ID, swaglord, and name. So the way the data attributes work is anything that follows the dash in data will be built in this DOM string map. So if I do dataset.id, cool ID, dataset.swaglord will be swaggo, and then naturally, what is dataset.name? Just the alert, right? And so that's useful for us. Notice, right, let me go through here. If I click console log, what is happening? Nothing, right? Only when I click the alert me will this line of code fire, right? Which makes total sense. So what I want to introduce you to is something called event delegation and event bubbling. Who has done the reading on this? Is it just like late in the day? Or just note you didn't do the reading? Okay. It's okay. All right, so let's talk. Boop, boop, boop. Boop, 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 right? So there's this like really powerful graph here. Not graph, but like graphic. And that is, what is event delegation? So you start with the window, then it goes down to the document, right? The whole document object model. Then you're in your HTML, then your body, then you have a table, you have a T-body. And then if you're not really good with HTML, it doesn't matter. These essentially could be anything, right? Just think of them as just like H1s with children of more H2s or H3s or P tags, whatever. The idea here is this. What is event delegation? Events happen in 3 phases. A capture phase, and that is from the window to whatever the event is, and then something called the target phase, which is a little bit difficult to see. Once it's at the target phase, whatever my event is, it will then bubble back up into the window. What does this really mean for us? This means that anything that happens to any child element, the parent will know about. So for example, if I clicked this table row, would the table body know about that click event? Yes. In the same way that if I clicked this table data, would the HTML tag know about it? Right. If I click this table row, would this table data know about it? No. So it kind of stops at a certain point and then goes back up. That's really all you really need to know about event delegation. How can this possibly help us? Well, the path that we were going down was I need an event listener on this alert me button, this console log button, and then the console error button. I was going to add 3 event listeners. But if I know that the children, if something happens to the children, the parent knows about it, could I, in theory, let's say there was a div that wrapped all 3 of those buttons. If I added an event listener to the parent of all 3 of those buttons, if I clicked any of those buttons, remember they're children of the div, would the parent div know about it? Yes. And so I saved myself from having to create 3 event listeners into making just 1. Event listeners take up some memory, and if you wind up doing a lot, then it actually will consume a ton of memory, and then it will become very difficult to kind of manage. And so let's kind of take that Airbnb example, right? Where we're at Airbnb, I want to go to, you guys want to go anywhere? Japan? What city was that? What? Sao Paulo. Sure, let's go there. That sounds fun. For 2 people. Cool. I have all of these things here, right? Like, I can probably get away with, at some point, let's just say I can click on each of these and rate them, right? Let's just say for whatever reason this functionality worked and I can click and rate each one individually. Should I have 4 event listeners here? Or should I just put one on the parent that encompasses all of them and listen for the click? And then determine, did I click on 1, 2, 3, or 4? And then do some sort of logic with that. That sounds mo better, right? And so this can get out of control as you think of like scaling out your application, because look, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 4 more, there's, oh my goodness, there's more, and then you can start to see that very quickly, if I wanted to add an event listener for every single one of these ratings, they'll get crazy. And then, oh, it's not doing it. If I had infinite scroll and I keep adding on more, in theory, I'd be adding more event listeners every single time, which very quickly, just browsing the page, I would wind up in the scale of 40, 50, 60 event listeners. When I can have one on like just this parent here, maybe one on just this parent here, something like that. And so I can reduce the number of event listeners I have. Are there any questions on like this idea of what we're trying to accomplish today? Who feels comfortable about like what we're trying to do? Sweet. So let's do it. Let's take a look at this index.html. Is there any sort of parent div that encompasses all of these buttons? Okay, helicopter parent. True that. The philosophy behind this event listener is you want to put it in the lowest possible place that encompasses everything that you want to do. Because if I put the event listener on helicopter parent and I'm listening for a click, in theory, that event listener will still fire in this div, in this break, in this div, in this div, even this p tag, which has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm trying to do, would still know about it. If I put the event listener here, this is the lowest place that still holds all of my data. Are there any questions on kind of like that thought process? Cool. Now, however, if I had this button, boop, 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 here, where should I potentially put the event listener? Yeah, this one. Yep, correct. Very good. Look at those. Look at those lines. So money. Cool? Yeah.
I'm just confused about how you would like group what buttons you actually want under the one event listener? Or like, is there kind of like a scale of like how many event listeners you actually want to have versus how many buttons on the page? Or what to stop from just listening to like every event everywhere?
If you listen to like every event everywhere, you can really clog up what you're doing. So for example, let's just do it. Ready? Cool. If I were to put on the document dot add event listener, and I was listening for what? Sure, click, right? And all this does is boop boop, and this would just simply console log the event. Cool. Let's go back to the page. If I click anywhere on this page, it will log it, which would be crazy. But let's do this. Let's drop a debugger here. Cool. So if I click anywhere on this page, I will get not only the console log, but I'll also pause the code. Right? If I click inside this input, what is the event.target? I clicked the input. What is the target of the event, which is the click? If I clicked the input, what is the target of the click? It's the input. Okay, let's practice this one more time. If I click this comments div, right? Let's take a look at what that is. This H3 comments, right? If I click this comments, what is the target of the event, which is the click? Whoops, I'm like typing over there like a clown. It's the H3. So whatever I click on becomes the target, which makes sense for the event, right? I can use this information in the way that, let me get rid of this debugger, it's gonna drive me nuts. In the way that if I put an event listener on this parent, I can determine based on the target if it was the console error, the console log, or the alert. I can check, hey, what did you target? If the target was a button that said alert me, then you should alert. But if the target was console log, then you should console log. That logic just sort of follows and makes sense, right? So let's actually do that. Let's not add event listeners on the document, right? No bueno. And let's think, what did we determine was the right answer to grab? What is the div or p tag or whatever that we should be putting? Let's just make it easy. That we should be doing. On line 30, right? So I can make an ID for it. That way I can make it unique and identifying because I have so many divs there. If I do query selector by div, there's no way I'm going to get the right thing. So here I'm just going to put button mommy, right? Or button daddy. Yeah, button parent. It's fine. So let me do this. Let's grab that button parent. Let's get rid of this. Bloop. Const button. Oh man, it sneaks up quick. Parent equal to document.query selector. And what are we query selecting for? Button parent. Yeah. So let's refresh and see what is button parent. Cool. It's this div that encompasses everything. So far, so good. So inside this button parent, if I added an event listener for a click, now I will run some sort of function, takes in the E, takes in some event, and all I'm going to do is put a debugger. Cool. Here's the idea. If I click inside input, what happens? Nothing. If I click this H3, nothing. I click this high, nothing. If I click the div itself, right? This is part of the div on the side of the buttons. It's part of the div. What happens? I had the debugger. Because I put the event listener on the div. But what is the target that I clicked on? Was it the button? It was the entire div. So I can easily say, yo, what's that target though? It's the div, which is interesting. However, if I click the alert me, what is the e.target? That swaglord button, right? Interesting. So what is e.target.dataset? The DOM string map, right, with ID, swaglord, and name. So let's do this. Inside here, I can determine what e.target is easily. Do I want this debugger to fire anywhere in the div? What if I just wanted the debugger to fire if I click the alert button? How would I write this? Knowing what I know about e.target? If e.target, oops. What is e.target though? That's e.target.dataset. E.target is just the button tag itself. But if I were to do e.target.dataset.id, it would be what? Cool ID. So if the e.target.dataset is actually equal to cool ID, then I want it to proc the debugger. So let's check it. If I click the console error, nothing, console log, and I hit the alert me. Well, the debugger is in this condition. And then it just goes without saying, but what if the e.target.dataset was log? Dataset.name was log. What should happen? I should console log something. e.target.dataset.name is equal to log. Then I should console log. Yes. So if I refresh, console error, nothing. Console log and debugger. So now I have one event listener with conditions in there because I know what the target is. I can track the target. And if the target is what I want it to be, then it will do something. So summing up, again, just what event delegation is, right? There's this capture phase, there's a target phase, and then there's a bubbling. The big takeaway is that if you put an event listener on a parent, it can listen to everything happening to its children. Cool? Another big takeaway is earlier in this append child, let's think. When I do new comment, right? This right here, this new comment, is what exactly? It's a brand new p tag that did not exist on the DOM when it first loaded, right? This p tag did not exist on the DOM when it first loaded. It only got created after I clicked submit. So would it make sense that here, let's just say I wanted, for whatever reason, to click on each of these comments and change the color of them or something. Should I be adding an event listener every single time we submit to each one of these p tags that I make brand new? Or can I look at maybe the comment container to see if you've clicked on one of the comments and then do something? That way I have one event listener. No matter how many things I add on, I slap on the DOM, I've got one additional event listener. And that's just saving memory. Are there any questions about event delegation? Yeah.
For
I want to avoid using else in this case because if would mean only if this condition. If I do else, that means anything not this would run as well. So I'm only using specific if statements to track very specific conditions. Because else is like the net that captures everything else.
What about if also? I was just wondering what's the normal to do.
It would be just continuous if statements. That being said, it would make sense then if you wanted to. If this got really long, you can use switch case statements. Good question, right? All right. Are there any questions on like event delegation, what it is, how we can use it to our advantage, why it would be useful, and ultimately, just by a show of hands, who feels comfortable adding fewer event listeners because you know you can add it to the parent? Okay, who would add event listeners to the document? Smart. Okay, I appreciate your time. I just want to keep it short so you keep working today. That's all I got for you.